fuck that. Let's do this. Hey everyone, it's Movie Lover 120 here, and I'm here with a brand new movie review, and this movie review is going to be for the fourth and unfortunately would be final installment of the original film series of this character, and that would be, of course, for the next and thankfully final film of the Joel Schumacher era of this franchise, and that would have to go for none other than 1997's most notorious masterpiece, Batman and Robin. There. That's pretty much that. So this is actually going to be an epic movie rant. But anyway, before I get into details and how this was made, let's get on with the plot of this movie. Well, the plot of this movie is Batman and Robin are back working side by side to stop the villains of Gotham City. But is there tension appearing between them, especially when one villainess who calls herself Poison Ivy can make anyone fall in love with her, literally? Along with Poison Ivy, you also have the icy Mr. Freeze, who is freezing anything which gets in his way from achieving his goal. Yeah. So how was this travesty made? Well, after Batman Forever became a box office success in June 1995, Warner Bros. Immediately commissioned yet another sequel. Right away. They hired director Joel Schumacher again, and writer Akiva Goldsman to reprise their duties the following August, and decided it was best to fast-track production for a June 1997 target release date. Really? Which is a break from the usual 3-year gap between films. Schumacher wanted to homage both the broadcast style of the 1960s television series and the work of Dick Sprung. The storyline of Batman and Robin was conceived by Schumacher and Goldsman during pre-production on A Time to Kill. Portions of Mr. Freeze's backstory were based on Batman the Animated Series episode Heart of Ice, written by Paul Dini. Goldsman, however, expressed concerns about the script during pre-production discussions with Schumacher. And while Crystal Donnell reprised his role as Robin, Val Kilmer decided not to reprise the role of Batman for Batman Forever. Schumacher even admitted he had difficulty working with Kilmer on Forever. He sort of just quit, Schumacher said, and we sort of fired him. Schumacher would later go on to say that Kilmer wanted to work on the island of Dr. Moreau because Marlon Brando was cast in the film. Kilmer said he was not aware of the fast-track production and was already committed to The Saint. David Duchovny claimed he was considered for the role of Batman, but he joked the reason they did not cast him was because his nose was too big. And Schumacher originally had a strong interest in calling William Baldwin in Kilmer's place, but George Clooney was cast instead. Schumacher believed Clooney could provide a lighter interpretation of the character than Michael Keaton from Batman and Batman Returns, which he did not, and Kilmer, which he definitely did not even top either. The shooting schedule allowed Clooney to similarly work on ER without any scheduling conflicts. In the documentary Shadows of the Bat, the cinematic saga of The Dark Knight, Schumacher said he was given the mandate by the studio to make the film even more toyetic, even when compared to Batman Forever, once again to his dismay. So, yeah. So, Batman Forever then went to be released in theaters on June 20th, 1997. And made $238 million worldwide. But not the good kind of $238 million. The movie had a budget of $160 million worldwide, so actually this movie was thankfully a box office bomb. It even received so many negative reviews from critics and Batman fans, and is considered one of the worst films ever made. And even became the lowest grossing Batman film to date. As for my reaction, fuck this movie! I hate it with a burning passion. And I am pissed that I have to review this movie on my channel. Anyways, let's get on with the god-awful bad qualities so we can get this out of the way quick. The bad qualities are, well, like I said, the executive meddling. While Schumacher's Batman Forever was less dark and more kid-friendly to appease, Warner Bros. Executives felt Batman Returns was too dark and inappropriate for kids. And as Schumacher was told to make this movie even more kid-friendly, to where dark elements of any kind from the previous movies had to be done away with entirely, thus killing the franchise entirely on ice. No pun intended, Mr. Freeze. We're gonna get to you in a bit. While the premise of Batman and Robin going up against Poison Ivy, Bane, and Mr. Freeze sounded very original and a very great idea, it was sadly and unfortunately ruined by a horrible execution that essentially turned the original Batman film series into a dead horse, with lots of cappiness instead of dark subject matter. The costume designs, while okay, did not improve from Batman Forever, as Batman's suits are recolors from Forever, while Robin's costume is just a red Nightwing with a cape. They added so much unwanted details, such as the infamous bat nipples and bat butts, or bat asses. No, bat asses. In that beginning of the review, like you all saw. They also even added solar suits for Batman, Robin, and Batgirl in the climax. They even added a bat ass and bat nipples to Batgirl too. And the vehicles look like toy-like and silly-like. It came straight from an elementary kid's story that he or she wanted to tell. Then again, this film looks like it was made to sell toys. In fact, Joel Schumacher himself later expressed his regret over the film being essentially turned into a feature-length toy commercial. There's poor grasp of the source material too, like Barbara or Batgirl is now Alfred's niece and not Commissioner Gordon's daughter like she's supposed to be. Like, what happened here? I'm sorry, but I know this was not Joel Schumacher's fault, but whoever came up with the idea of Batgirl being Alfred's niece has not even read a Batgirl comic. And blatant disregard for physics, like characters being able to safely jump from dangerous heights even though they probably should have died for doing that. There's numerous oddities, plot holes, and inconsistencies, including but not limited to, like, how can Mr. Freeze somehow smoke a cigarette in, like, one scene or a cigar, which goes against the state of his altered biology? And Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy do not even seem very compatible as partners because he wants to freeze the world and she wants plants to roam the world. And plants cannot survive in freezing temperatures. So she has, like, no point to be in this movie. Miss Beavan shows no ill effects from wearing a skimpy outfit in Freeze's frozen hideout, even though, then again, I'm surprised any of Freeze's henchmen in his hideout are not all frozen dead. After Mr. Freeze takes out 2 vials with a blue liquid in them, we see that they fit perfectly into Alfred's 1V stand in the Wayne Manor. Unless they were both made by Wayne Enterprises, it's not possible to fit it in the 1V stand that perfectly. During the chase in the beginning of the movie, Mr. Freeze freezes Robin before he can snatch the diamond, but chooses to spare Batman by saying he'll kill him later, which is idiotic, since nothing is stopping him from doing to Batman what he did to Robin. Like, really? And it's out of character, because Mr. Freeze probably would have froze Batman too. There was even a pointless scene where we see the Riddler and Two-Face's outfits at the Arkham Asylum, and speaking of Two-Face, isn't he supposed to be dead? I mean, he died in Forever, which this movie is a sequel to, so why do we see his costume there? I mean, Riddler makes sense, but Two-Face's costume? Really? And Batman and Robin appear at an auction instead of as their actual selves, which was Dick Grayson and Bruce Wayne, which is strange since they usually only show up when a crime is going down. During a scene where Batman, Robin, and Batgirl are on their vehicles and are being pursued by Freeze's henchmen, she's wearing a mask which looks hideous on her, but as soon as they reach the museum, she takes off. Which is supposedly likely because Alicia Silverstone didn't want to wear it due to how awful it looked on her. That's not a surprise. And there's one scene that features rubber ice on the car. No joke. There's actual rubber ice on the car. So why is the car still working? And countless amounts of product placements, such as the Apple Macintosh computers in a certain scene. And there are numerous technical oddities presented in the film which adds to how poorly made this movie is. Like, for example, when Robin comes out of the water one scene, the scene goes in reverse motion just so he goes back under. When Mr. Freeze says, "It's winter forever here in Gotham," the audio doesn't seem synced to the movement of his lips. Very poor acting on everyone's part, especially George Clooney as Batman. Speaking of which, he was only hired as a replacement for Kilmer since Kilmer was committed to another movie, hence why Clooney took his place, which comes off odd since both movies feature the same director but with two completely different actors playing Batman. Speaking of the acting, most of the fans thought that George Clooney made a poor Batman, as he himself even admitted that he really hated playing Batman and would never portray him again in a planned canceled sequel. Years after starting this film, he refuses to talk to people about how awful he felt playing Batman, and most people don't blame him at all for being unhappy about it. And George Clooney is literally one of the best actors in cinema. 2. Makes plenty of other good films, and they have to put the poor dude in films like this. Don't worry, thankfully he played in better movies after this. And Chris O'Donnell's acting for Robin is even worse in this movie than it was in Forever, as he's an even more bratty teenager and all-around moron, and his character Dick Grayson or Robin spends most of his screen time acting like a whiny brat, just like Robin from Teen Titans Go, making him so unfaithful to the comics. The villains are not as good as they were in the comic books for many reasons. Like Mr. Freeze is portrayed as an absolute joke, who relies on ice puns for his lines, and using his vehicles as a winged jetpack that came straight from the film's toy designs. And Bane is portrayed as incredibly a dimwit named Antonio Diego, in stark contrast to his comic book counterpart, who has genuine level intellect. And Jason Wood... In fact, Bane literally does whole thing. Throughout the whole movie, Bane sounds like... and he doesn't even talk. Bane literally talks in all of his adaptations. And Jason Woodrow, who's one of Swamp Thing's arch-nemesis as the Floor Commander in the comics, is now a generic mad scientist who creates Bane and Poison Ivy before getting killed by the latter. The first two films had an even dark and serious tone and were done quite well, and while the third film was a bit more lighthearted, it had some dark moments as well, but this one was way too silly and syrupy for a superhero film, even more so the 1966 Batman TV series. Also, a cartoon effect can even be heard when a fighting scene happens like tripping sound effect. And let's not forget the infamous scene where Batman, despite being very rich, reveals that he has a Bat credit card, which is just nonsensical and had no reason to exist at all because Bat credit cards do not exist in real life. There's even numerous unnecessary homoerotic innuendos, such as the camera zooming in on everyone's buttocks and crotches during the opening sequence, like I've already mentioned, as well as Batgirl sitting up sequences showing her breasts and buttocks as well. And there's an interesting theory that they are in the film due to Joel Schumacher being homosexual, and the pacing is awful. While Forever's pacing was hit or miss, the action scenes were at least decently done. But in this movie, nothing feels paced properly at all. There's even numerous dialogue or moments that makes it feel like an unintentional comedy, like for example, "I want a car. Chicks dig the car. This is why Superman works alone." More like this whole movie is why Superman works alone. It's no wonder Superman never has sidekicks because of this. When Barbara is first seen visiting with Alfred, she says, "I suppose they don't have far fax machines on elephants." Really? And now for Mr. Freeze. Ugh. Mr. Freeze in this movie is a joke. All he does is make unbelievably bad one-liners and too many ice puns, something his mainstream and animated counterparts would never say or do. And by ice puns, I mean these certain lines, for example...
In this universe, there's only one absolute. Everything freezes. You are not sending me to the cooler. What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age! Can you feel it coming? The icy cold of space. Ah! After you're frozen, your icy tomb will plummet back to Gotham. Freeze well. Stay cool, bird boy.
Okay, enough about Mr. Freeze. Now on to Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy's origin story even copies Selena Kyle and Catwoman's backstory from the second film, as both backstories involve a shy scientist discovering her boss's evil plans and he tries to kill her, but she revives and transforms into a villain. Yep. That was really original. And Barbara Pennyworth slash Batgirl in this movie has no reason to be in this movie, like I said, because she contributes nothing to the plot. So there's no need for her to be in this movie. So if she was in this movie, shouldn't they have called it Batman, Robin, and Batgirl? Then there's pointless subplots such as Barbara's motorcycling hobby, Alfred's sickness, although to be honest, Alfred's sickness is actually kind of handled the most decent of these, and Wayne's plans with his girlfriend. On the topic of Bruce Wayne's girlfriend, she is bland, underdeveloped, and unnecessary. Not to mention she doesn't even have a role in the movie. Yeah, he doesn't even have a single love interest in this film. And this film sadly killed a few careers of the actors who were involved in this film. It killed Crystal Donnell's career, and it killed Alicia Silverstone's career. Some people can say this killed Uma Thurman's career, but Uma Thurman still went on to appear in Kill Bill, so it didn't entirely kill her career. I don't know why people say that. And due to the film's bad reviews and not doing so well at the box office and actually being a box office bomb, as well as killing the Batman film series for 8 years and canceling Batman Unchained, which was supposed to be a sequel to this film where I think we would have had Nicolas Cage's Scarecrow, which thankfully that did not happen because there was no repair for this franchise for a long time after this embarrassment of a movie. However, I guess there are maybe some bearable moments that could be found in this horrid thing. Like, for example, the bearable moments are, well, all the vehicles look like toys. They're maybe, I guess, good to look at. Some of the special effects are good because even if most of them are practical with a small touch of CGI. And if you took out the bat nipples and butt shots, the outfits may be kind of nicely done if you took out those. And before Joel Schumacher's sad death in 2020, he thankfully apologized to a lot of angry Batman fans in the documentary film Shadows of the Bat, the cinematic saga, The Dark Knight, and on the film's 20th anniversary for ruining the Batman film franchise. So actually, Joel Schumacher even hates this movie too, and he refuses to be associated with it. And he doesn't even want to be associated with Batman Forever ever. He actually hates both the Batman movies he made because they were far from what he wanted to do. I think it was hinted like I said, it was kind of hinted he wanted to make a much more violent movies than the Tim Burton films. They were going to make the Burton films look G-rated, but Warner Bros. Was like, no, fuck that. Make our version. And he had to make their version. And I feel, poor guy. And the movie can make for a great comedy if not taken literally, and can be a so bad it's good movie. And the song The End is the Beginning is the end by the Smashing Pumpkins, is decent and would later appear in the teaser trailer of the film adaptation of Watchmen. And as mentioned above, there are unintentionally funny moments. And the franchise would eventually get back on track when Christopher Nolan revived and rebooted it 8 years later with Batman Begins, which was a huge improvement over this film, and it's going to be the next review, and that's going to be way more fun to do than this. However, when it comes to watching this movie, don't do it ever, like at all. Because this is one of the worst movies I ever saw in my life. It's one of the worst pieces of shit that I've ever had to review on this channel. And there is one thing I can say about Batman and Robin, and here's what I'm going to say about it, and rank it. I'm going to give Batman and Robin the first -0 out of 10. Whew! I had a lot to process. But we are thankfully done reviewing Batman and Robin finally. And we are now done talking about the dreaded Joel Schumacher era, and we are done the original series. So with that being said, now that we've done the original Burton and Schumacher series, we can now get on to the next Batman adaptation series, and that's the Dark Knight trilogy. And I can't wait to get on with this trilogy. I especially can't wait to talk about the Dark Knight soon, and I can't wait to talk about Batman Begins next. So, I'll put this back on the shelf. And until then, that'll be it for this video. Thank y'all for watching. And if you'd like to want to see more, And don't forget to like, subscribe to Movie Lover 120.